The Valoran Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered 2,000 worlds. Some planets surrendered after seeing their fleet. Others fought for days before falling. None had ever survived. The Valorans believed they were the greatest power in the universe. They had never been wrong. Fleet Commander Goral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Around him, 9,500 warships floated in perfect formation beyond Neptune. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy cities. Each crew had fought in dozens of conquests. Goral had personally overseen the fall of 300 worlds. He was old, experienced, and absolutely certain of victory. Commander, his second officer, said, "We have completed our scans of the target planet." Goral looked at the blue world on his screen. Earth, a small planet with one moon. 7 billion inhabitants. Primitive technology. No faster-than-light travel. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. They still used chemical rockets and nuclear bombs. By Valoran standards, they were children playing with fire. Their military strength? Goral asked. Approximately 300 space-capable vessels, all confined to their solar system. Their weapons are generations behind ours. Goral allowed himself a small smile. This would be easy. Perhaps the easiest conquest of his career. He would add Earth to the Empire before the week ended. The Emperor would be pleased. Send the standard message, Goral ordered. Give them one planetary rotation to surrender. The message went out in every Earth language. It was simple and direct. Surrender or face extinction. The Valorans waited for the expected response. Fear, panic, immediate submission. What they received was silence. On Earth, Colonel Park Jun-ho was the first to see the anomaly. He worked at the Korean Space Defense Center in Dajin. His job was to watch the sky for threats. For 20 years, the threats had been asteroids and space debris. Nothing more. That changed at exactly 3:47 a.m. His screens lit up with warnings. Something massive had appeared near Neptune. Not one object. Thousands. Park Jun-ho felt his coffee cup slip from his fingers. It shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. He was already reaching for the emergency communication line. Within minutes, his warning reached military commands across the world. Within an hour, world leaders were in emergency meetings. Within 2 hours, every telescope and sensor on Earth pointed toward the outer solar system. Lieutenant Kim Yuno worked at the United Nations Space Command in Geneva. She was young, only 28, but she was one of the best tactical analysts on the planet. Her specialty was calculating trajectories and predicting movement patterns. When the data reached her station, she worked faster than she had ever worked before. Her calculations showed the fleet would reach Earth in approximately 72 hours. 3 days. Humanity had 3 days to prepare for an enemy they had never imagined. "This is impossible," one general said during the emergency council meeting. "We cannot fight this. We must negotiate." "Negotiate what?" Another responded. "They want our planet, our people, our everything." The arguments continued for hours. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. Many simply did not know what to do. Fear filled the room like smoke. Then Dr. Lee Tai-woo spoke. He was 73 years old. His hair was white, his hands shook slightly, and he walked with a cane. But his mind was sharp as ever. For 30 years, he had worked on secret projects that most governments denied existed. Weapons that were too terrible to acknowledge. "I can help," he said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew what he had built. The orbital defense grid, Lee Tai-woo continued. It was never dismantled, only hidden. "I can activate it within 48 hours. It will not stop them completely, but it will hurt them." Hope entered the room for the first time. At a military base in Pohang, Captain Choi Hannah received her orders. She commanded the Horizon, Earth's first and only ship capable of traveling between stars. It had been a secret project built over 20 years using technology that officially did not exist. The Horizon was faster, stronger, and more advanced than any other Earth vessel. But it was still just one ship. Choi Hannah gathered her crew of 200. She looked at their faces. Young men and women, scientists, engineers, soldiers. None of them had ever fought a real space battle. None of them had expected to die in the stars, yet none of them ran. "We have 3 days," she told them. "In 3 days, an enemy fleet will try to take our world. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender. They are wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We may not win. We may all die. But we will make them remember Earth. We will make them regret coming here. And if we are very lucky, if we fight hard enough, we might just survive." Her crew responded with silence. Then, slowly, one person began to clap, then another. Soon the entire hangar echoed with applause. Not because they believed they would win, but because they had decided not to surrender. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Scientists worked without sleep. Factory workers built weapons around the clock. Ordinary people did extraordinary things because there was no other choice. The Valorans watched from the edge of the solar system. They saw the small ships gathering. They saw the frantic activity on the planet's surface. They interpreted it as panic. As the desperate actions of a doomed species, Commander Goral finished his evening meal and retired to his quarters. He would sleep well tonight. Tomorrow, the conquest would begin. 3 days from now, Earth would belong to the Empire. He had no doubts. He should have, because humanity was not panicking. They were preparing. For 10,000 years, humans had fought each other. They had invented 1,000 ways to kill. War was in their blood, in their history, in their very nature. The Valorans had conquered peaceful worlds. Earth was not peaceful, and the aliens were about to learn that lesson in blood. The invasion began at dawn over the Pacific Ocean. Commander Goral sent his advance force of 200 ships to test Earth's defenses. He expected token resistance, perhaps a few missiles. Nothing that could threaten Valoran technology. The 200 ships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation. Their shields glowed blue as they entered the cloud layer. Below them, the ocean stretched dark and empty. No human ships waited. No aircraft rose to meet them. The Valoran officers laughed among themselves. The humans were hiding, cowards, all of them. Then the sky turned white. 4,000 nuclear missiles launched simultaneously from submarines, aircraft, and ground installations across the Pacific region. They came from every direction. From below, from the sides, from behind clouds where aircraft had been waiting for hours. The Valorans detected them too late. Nuclear weapons were primitive. Every Valoran knew this. Their shields could handle energy weapons far more powerful than atomic bombs. But the shields were designed to stop focused beams and precise strikes. They were not designed for this. Not for 4,000 explosions happening at once. It's not for the combined force of humanity's most terrible weapons concentrated in a single moment. Not for the electromagnetic pulse that followed. Scrambling sensors and communications. When the light faded, 140 Valoran ships were gone, vaporized. The remaining 60 were damaged. Their shields flickering, their crews in shock. On the eternal victory, Commander Goral stared at his tactical display. He could not believe what he was seeing. 140 ships lost in seconds against a primitive species with primitive weapons. "How?" he whispered. No one answered. No one could. Colonel Park Junho watched the battle from his command center in Dogon. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From exhaustion. He had not slept in 60 hours. Around him, his team worked frantically, coordinating with military installations worldwide. Second wave confirmed destroyed, Lieutenant Kim Yuna reported. She had transferred to his facility to assist with real-time analysis. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. "Enemy fleet is reorganizing. They will adapt their shields," Park Junho said. "That trick will not work twice. Then we use different tricks." This was humanity's greatest weapon, not nuclear bombs, not missiles. Adaptation. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other. Every war produced new weapons. Every battle produced new tactics. They had learned to change, to evolve, to survive. The Valorans had conquered peaceful worlds. They followed doctrine. They expected enemies to surrender after the first demonstration of power. They did not understand an enemy that refused to break. Dr. Li Tai-Wu activated his orbital defense grid from a bunker deep beneath the mountains.
What?
The grid was a network of satellites that had been disguised as space debris for decades. Satellite carried an electromagnetic pulse weapon powerful enough to disable a warship. The first pulse hit the Valoran fleet as they regrouped near the moon. Navigation systems failed. Targeting computers crashed. Ships drifted into each other. 3 carriers collided and exploded, their debris destroying a dozen more vessels. Commander Goral ordered his fleet to pull back and recalibrate. This enemy was more dangerous than expected. But he still had overwhelming numbers, 9,000 ships against 300. The outcome was certain. It would just take longer. Captain Choi Hanna led the Horizon and Earth's defensive fleet in their first offensive action. 200 human ships against a Valoran supply convoy of 50 vessels. The odds seemed good. They were not. Valoran weapons tore through human ships like paper. 30 Earth vessels were destroyed in the first exchange. Choi Hanna watched her people die and felt rage burn in her chest. Cold rage, focused rage. All ships scatter formation, she ordered. Attack runs in groups of 3. Target their engines. Her fleet broke apart, becoming dozens of small units. The Valorans were confused. Their doctrine called for fleet-to-fleet combat. Organized lines, coordinated strikes. These humans fought like insects, darting in and out, never staying still. Lieutenant Commander Baek Min-ho commanded a squadron of 5 fighters. His shields were failing. His weapons were low on ammunition, but he saw an opportunity. A Valoran carrier had dropped its shields to launch more attack craft.
Dude, the hangar bay was open.
Unprotected. Min-ho pulled back. Choi Hanna ordered over the communication channel. You cannot survive that approach. I know, Baek Min-ho replied. His voice was steady, almost peaceful. Tell my wife I love her. Tell my daughter to be brave. He accelerated toward the carrier. Enemy fire tore at his ship. His wingman fell around him, but he did not stop. At the last moment, he armed his remaining missiles and flew directly into the hangar bay. The explosion consumed the carrier from inside. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship as fuel and ammunition ignited. The carrier broke apart, and its debris slammed into 40 nearby vessels. A chain reaction of destruction spread through the Valoran formation. 40 ships. Gone. Because one human pilot decided his life was worth trading, Commander Goral received the casualty reports with growing disbelief. 800 ships lost on the first day. 800. In his entire career, he had never lost more than 30 ships in a single conquest. These humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, afraid. Instead, they fought like demons. They used weapons designed to destroy themselves. They flew their ships into his carriers. They smiled as they died. What kind of species did such things? That night, Goral could not sleep. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched Earth rotate slowly in the distance. Blue and green and white, beautiful, innocent-looking, deceptive. On Earth, the survivors gathered their strength. The first day had cost them dearly. Nearly half their fleet was gone. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Cities had been damaged by falling debris from destroyed ships, but they had survived. More than that, they had hurt the enemy. For the first time, the Valoran Empire had faced a species that refused to surrender. A species that fought back with everything they had. Kim Yuna compiled the battle data and sent her analysis to every commander on Earth. Her message was simple. The enemy can be hurt. The enemy can be killed. Keep fighting, Captain. Captain Choi Hanna sat alone in her quarters on the horizon. In her hand, she held a photograph. Baek Min-ho, with his wife and daughter at a beach, smiling, happy, alive. She did not cry. It would be time for tears later if she survived. Right now, she had work to do. Tomorrow, the battle would continue. Tomorrow, more people would die, but humanity would not stop. Could not stop. This was no longer just about survival. This was about making the enemy pay for every inch of Earth they tried to take. By the third day, Commander Goral decided to change tactics. Space battles were costing too many ships. Instead, he would land ground forces and conquer Earth the traditional way. Soldiers against soldiers. His troops were trained warriors who had subdued countless worlds. Earth's defenders would crumble against them. 20,000 Valoran soldiers landed in Europe, 30,000 in Asia, 25,000 in North America. They expected quick victories. They expected frightened civilians and disorganized resistance. What they found was something else entirely, Sergeant. Odoyan had served in the Korean Special Forces for 15 years. He knew the mountains of Gangwon Province like he knew his own hands. Every cave, every trail, every hidden valley. When the Valorans landed near the eastern coast, Wenta took his team of 12 soldiers into those mountains and waited. The Valoran patrol came at dawn, 50 soldiers in advanced armor, carrying energy weapons that could vaporize a human in seconds. They moved with confidence, scanning the forest with their sensors. Their technology was superior. Their training was thorough. They detected no threats. They were wrong. The first explosion took out their scout vehicle. Homemade bomb built from fertilizer and fuel, primitive, devastating. Before the Valorans could react, gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Not energy weapons. Old-fashioned rifles, bullets that moved faster than their shields could track. Odoyan personally killed 7 Valorans with a hunting knife. He moved through the chaos like a ghost, striking from shadows, disappearing before they could target him. His team did the same. 12 humans against 50 aliens. When it ended, 43 Valorans were dead. Odoyan had lost 2 soldiers. He gathered his team and vanished into the mountains before reinforcements arrived. This scene repeated across the globe. In the forests of Germany, in the jungles of Brazil, in the deserts of Australia, everywhere the Valorans went, humans fought back with whatever they had. Farmers with shotguns, office workers with explosives, children throwing rocks at alien patrols. The Valorans captured some prisoners. They interrogated them, trying to understand why these people would not surrender. The answers confused them. "Because this is our home," one captured soldier said before dying. "Because you cannot have it." The aliens did not understand. On other worlds, species surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. They valued their lives. They accepted defeat. These humans seemed to value something else more than life itself. Commander Goral received troubling reports. His ground forces were taking heavy casualties. Supply lines were constantly attacked. Soldiers were disappearing in the night. Some were found dead in the morning, killed by weapons so primitive they should have been useless. "They fight without honor," one of his generals complained. "They hide. They ambush. They use tricks and traps." "They fight to survive," Goral replied quietly. He was beginning to understand something terrible. We have invaded their home. They have nowhere to retreat. Nothing to negotiate. They will fight until we kill them all, or leave. He did not know which option was worse. In Geneva, Dr. Shinyang Yi worked in a laboratory that had been moved underground when the invasion began. She was a biochemist, an expert in genetic manipulation and viral engineering. For years, she had worked on medical research, curing diseases, saving lives. Now she was building a weapon. A crashed Valoran ship had provided biological samples, blood, tissue, DNA. Within hours, Shinyangji had mapped their genetic structure. Within a day, she had identified weaknesses. Within 36 hours, she had created a virus specifically designed to attack Valoran physiology. It was elegant in its horror. The virus caused no symptoms at first. It spread through air and touch. It incubated for 72 hours. Then it attacked the respiratory system. Valorans began coughing, then bleeding, then dying. The aliens had never encountered biological warfare. On peaceful worlds, such weapons were banned. Nobody used diseases as weapons. It was too cruel, too indiscriminate. Humans had been using biological warfare for centuries. Against each other, against animals. Against crops, it was terrible and effective and absolutely devastating. Within 1 week, 30% of Valoran ground forces were incapacitated. Hospitals on their ships overflowed. Medical officers worked constantly and still could not stop the spread. Goral was forced to pull back all ground troops and quarantine them on orbital platforms. Colonel Park. Gunho intercepted Valoran communications during this period. His translation team worked around the clock to decode the enemy language. What they found was interesting. The Valorans had a word that appeared repeatedly in their messages. It had no direct translation in any Earth language. The closest meaning was somewhere between madness and unreasonable and incomprehensible. They were using this word to describe humans. Kim Yuna laughed when she heard this. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had not slept in days and was running on caffeine and anger. Madness, she said. They think we are mad because we fight back. Because we refuse to die quietly. They have conquered 2,000 worlds, and they have never seen anything like us. Is that good or bad? Park Junho asked. It means they do not understand us. That is an advantage, but it also means they fear us now. Scared enemies do desperate things. She was right. Commander Goral ordered his fleet to begin orbital bombardment. If ground invasion would not work, he would burn Earth cities from space. He would kill millions to break human resistance. He had never done such a thing before. It was against the Empire's customs, but these humans had left him no choice. The first city targeted was London. Valoran ships gathered in formation above England, charging their weapons. Below, millions of people looked up at the sky and waited for death. It never came. Dr. Li Taiwu had prepared for this. His defense grid included a network of interceptor satellites. They activated as the Valoran weapons fired, creating a shield of energy that deflected the bombardment into space. The Valorans tried again and again. Each time, the shield held. It would not last forever. The satellites were burning out one by one. But they had bought time. Precious time. On the horizon, Captain Choi Hannah watched the failed bombardment and smiled grimly. They tried to burn our world, she said to her crew. Now we burn theirs. She gave the order to attack. The counteroffensive had begun. The surviving human fleet numbered 180 ships. Against the Valoran armada of nearly 7,000 remaining vessels, these numbers should have meant nothing. A rounding error. A minor inconvenience. But numbers do not tell the whole story. Captain.
Oh.
Choi Hannah had spent the past 5 days studying her enemy. She had watched hours of battle recordings. She had analyzed their formations, their tactics, their responses, and she had found something interesting. The Valorans were predictable. Their doctrine was ancient, refined over 10,000 years of conquest. It was efficient, systematic, and utterly inflexible. When attacked from the left, they responded with specific maneuver. When their shields were damaged, they fell back in specific patterns. Every action had a predetermined response. Humans had no doctrine. They had chaos, improvisation, creativity born from desperation, and in war. Unpredictability was the deadliest weapon of all, Lieutenant Kim. Yuna had transferred to the horizon to provide tactical support. She sat at her console, processing data faster than any computer. Her mind saw patterns where others saw noise. She had predicted Valoran movements with 93% accuracy over the past 3 days. Their supply convoy is moving through Sector 7, she reported. 42 ships. Minimal escort. They are using the standard resupply formation. Choi Hannah studied the tactical display. Standard formation, meaning we know exactly where every ship will be. As Captain? Choi Hannah smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. All ships prepare for Operation Broken Arrow. We are going hunting. The attack came at what the Valorans called the third hour of darkness. Their supply convoy moved in perfect formation, carrying fuel and ammunition and food for the fleet. They had made this journey dozens of times during the invasion. Nothing had happened. Tonight was different. The human ships did not attack in formation. They came from everywhere, above, below, from behind asteroid fields. From inside debris clouds, they struck in groups of 2 and 3, hitting weak points that Kim Yuna had identified, then vanishing before the Valorans could respond. One human ship would attack, draw fire, then retreat. While the Valorans pursued, 2 more ships would strike from behind. When the Valorans turned to face this new threat, the first ship would return. It was chaos. Pure, calculated chaos. What are they doing? A Valoran commander screamed into his communication system. This is not how you fight a battle. He was right. This was not how battles were supposed to be fought. But no one had told the humans. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-ho flew a small fighter craft that had been damaged in earlier fighting. His shields were at 30%. His weapons were nearly depleted. By any reasonable standard, he should have retreated for repairs. Instead, he was leading a suicide run against a Valoran dreadnought. The dreadnought was the convoy's main protection. 2 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with weapons capable of destroying small moons. Its shields could withstand nuclear strikes. Its armor could deflect energy beams. But even dreadnoughts had weaknesses. Yoon Ji-ho had studied the enemy ship designs recovered from crashed vessels. He knew that Valoran engines required external cooling vents. He knew those vents were shielded, but the shields had a 3-second gap during energy cycling. 3 seconds. That was all he needed. His fighter dove toward the dreadnought, weaving through defensive fire that turned space around him into a light show of death. His wingmen fell one by one. He did not stop. He could not stop. At the last moment, he armed his remaining missiles and fired directly into the cooling vent. The missiles penetrated the gap. They struck the engine core. The explosion was visible from Earth. The dreadnought broke apart, its debris spreading across thousands of kilometers. Yoon Ji-ho did not survive. His fighter was consumed by the blast, but his final transmission reached every human ship in the fleet. It was an old Korean folk song. A song about mountains and rivers and home. A song about things worth dying for, Commander. Goral received the news of the convoy's destruction with something approaching despair. 42 ships lost, including a dreadnought. His fleet was running low on supplies. His soldiers were sick with the human plague. His officers were beginning to question his leadership. For the first time in his long career, Goral considered retreat. On Earth, Dr. Lee Tai-woo prepared his final weapon, Project Sunfire, a network of satellites that could redirect and concentrate solar energy into a focused beam. The technology was experimental, dangerous. It had never been tested at full power. It could destroy a fleet, Lee Tai-woo explained to the military commanders. But it could also fail catastrophically. The satellites might explode. The beam might scatter. There is a 30% chance of complete failure, and a 70% chance of success, Colonel Park Jun-ho replied. In our situation, those are excellent odds. They activated Project Sunfire on the 6th day. The Valoran fleet was regrouping near Mars, preparing for a final assault on Earth. 3,000 ships in tight formation, ready to overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. They detected the satellites activating, but did not understand what they were seeing. Then the sun moved. Not the sun itself, of course, but the light, the energy, concentrated through a network of mirrors and lenses, focused into a beam that crossed the distance between the sun and Mars in 8 minutes. When it hit the Valoran formation, it brought the fury of a star. The concentrated solar energy was hotter than any weapon the Valorans had ever faced. Their shields, designed to deflect artificial energy beams, could not handle pure stellar radiation at this intensity. Ships melted. Armor vaporized. Crews died in an instant, never knowing what had killed them. 3 battle groups, 1,200 ships, gone in seconds. Commander Goral watched from the safety of his flagship, far from the beam's path. His hands were shaking. His officers were silent. Some were weeping. Demons, one whispered. We are fighting demons. Gorel did not disagree. The humans had turned their own sun into a weapon. They had fought with biological plagues and nuclear fire. They had sent their pilots on suicide missions. They had invented new forms of destruction in days. What kind of species was this? What kind of madness drove them? He finally understood the truth that his officers had been afraid to speak. They could not win this war. Every ship lost brought them closer to extinction. The humans lost ships too, but they seemed to not care. They replaced fallen pilots with new volunteers. They built new weapons from scrap. They fought with joy in their hearts, as if war was their natural state. The Valoran Empire had conquered 2,000 worlds. They had never faced a species like this, a species that was born fighting, that had spent its entire existence perfecting the art of killing, that saw war not as tragedy, but as opportunity. Commander Gorel made his decision. Signal the fleet, he said quietly. We are retreating. The most powerful invasion force the galaxy had ever seen began to withdraw. They had come with 9,500 ships. They would leave with far fewer. On the 7th day, Commander Gorel gave the order that no Valoran commander had ever given in 10,000 years of conquest. Full retreat, the remains of his fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system. Ships with damaged engines limped toward the hyperspace threshold. Medical vessels overflowed with wounded and dying soldiers. Communication channels were filled with confusion and fear. Of the 9,500 ships that had arrived with such confidence, fewer than 200 remained functional. And that number was dropping every hour as damaged systems failed and wounded. Ships fell behind. The humans pursued. Captain Choi Hanna led the horizon, and 60 surviving. Earth vessels in a relentless chase across the solar system. Her ships were battered. Her crew was exhausted. Some of her pilots had been flying for 3 days without sleep, but they did not stop. Captain Kim Yuna reported from her station. The enemy fleet is fragmenting. Multiple ships are dropping out of formation. Their flagship is increasing speed. Joy Hanna studied the tactical display. The Valorans were abandoning their damaged ships, running, fleeing. Greatest military force in the galaxy was running from a species they had considered primitive 7 days ago. Continue. Pursuit, she ordered. No mercy until they leave our system. Some would later question this decision. The Valorans were retreating. The invasion was over. Why not let them go? Why continue the slaughter? The answer was simple. The Valoran Empire controlled 2,000 worlds. They had resources beyond counting, ships beyond number. If they believed Earth was weak, they would return. Maybe in a year. Maybe in 10 years. But they would return. Earth needed to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. A message written in fire and blood. A message that said, do not come here. Do not threaten us. This world is death. The chase continued for 6 hours. Human ships picked off stragglers one by one. Valoran vessels that fell behind were destroyed without hesitation. Some tried to surrender. The humans accepted their surrender, took them prisoner, and continued hunting. Commander Gorel watched his fleet die around him. Every hour brought new casualty reports. Every minute, more ships vanished from his tactical display. The humans were not satisfied with victory. They wanted annihilation. Finally, hyperspace threshold appeared on his sensors. Safety. Escape. A way home to report his failure to the Emperor. Around him, only 17 ships remained. 17 out of 9,500? His entire officer corps was dead or captured. His flagship was damaged in a dozen places. His crew was terrified. Then his communication officer spoke. Commander, the human flagship is hailing us.
Oliga!
Gorel hesitated. What could they possibly want? To gloat? To demand surrender? He was already retreating. What more could they take from him? Put them through, he said quietly. Captain Choi Hanna's face appeared on his screen. She was human. Female. Young by galactic standards. Her uniform was stained with sweat and blood. Behind her, he could see her bridge crew working at damaged consoles. They looked exhausted, wounded, broken. But her eyes were not broken. They burned with something Goral had never seen in any species he had conquered. Not fear, not hatred, something else. Something that made his ancient heart feel cold. "Go home, Choi," Hannah said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not for conquest. Tell them that if you return, we will not leave survivors." Goral wanted to respond, to threaten, to promise revenge, but he could not find the words. This small human, this primitive creature from a primitive world, had defeated the greatest fleet in galactic history. What could he possibly say? "We will remember," he finally said. It was not a threat. It was simply truth. "Good, Choi," Hannah replied. "Remember well." She cut the communication. The human fleet stopped pursuing. They held formation at the hyperspace threshold and watched as the 17 Valoran ships engaged their drives and vanished into the space between stars. On Earth, the survivors began to count their losses. Millions were dead. Cities were damaged. The global infrastructure was crippled. The economy had collapsed. There would be years of rebuilding ahead, but they had survived. Colonel Park Jun-ho stood in the ruins of Seoul with Lieutenant Kim Yuna beside him. The city was half destroyed. Fire still burned in the distance. The air smelled of smoke and death. But the sky above was clear. No alien ships. No invasion force. Just clouds and sun and the promise of tomorrow. "We did it," Kim Yuna said softly. She sounded surprised, as if she had not truly believed they would win until this moment. "We did," Park Jun-ho agreed. "Now comes the hard part. Rebuilding? Preparing. They will return someday. Maybe not the Valorans. But someone. The galaxy knows about us now. They know what we did here. Some will fear us. Others will want to test us." Kim Yuna nodded slowly. She understood. This was not the end of humanity's struggle. It was the beginning. Dr. Lee Tai-woo was already designing new weapons. Dr. Shin. Yoonji was studying captured Valoran technology. Sergeant Oh Doyan, now promoted to major, was training the next generation of soldiers. Across the world, humans were learning from what they had survived. Captain Choi Hannah returned to Earth as a hero. Crowds cheered her name. Politicians wanted to give her medals and honors. She accepted them politely, but without enthusiasm. She had seen too much death to celebrate. In her quarters, she kept the photographs of those who had fallen. Baek Min-ho, Yoon Ji-ho, hundreds of others. Men and women who had given everything so that humanity could survive. She would not forget them. None of them would be forgotten. In the Valoran capital, far across the galaxy, the Emperor demanded answers. How had a primitive species destroyed his greatest fleet? How had they killed millions of his soldiers? How had they turned the tide of a war that should have been over in days? Commander Goral, broken and disgraced, stood before the imperial throne. He had expected execution. Instead, the Emperor demanded only one thing: understanding. "What are they?" the Emperor asked. "These humans. What makes them different?" Goral considered the question for a long time. He remembered the nuclear fire, the biological weapons, the suicide attacks, the relentless pursuit, the burning eyes of Captain Choi Hannah. They were not afraid to die, he finally said. They were not afraid to suffer. They fought as if losing was impossible, even when they were losing. Every soldier, every civilian, every child believed they would win. "We have conquered thousands of worlds, Your Majesty, but we have never faced a species that chooses madness over surrender." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke a single word: forbidden. Earth was declared forbidden territory. No Valoran ship would approach that system again. The order was absolute, permanent. The Emperor had looked into the face of humanity, seen something that frightened even him. Word spread across the galaxy. The Valoran Empire, conquerors of 2,000 worlds, had been defeated by a species that did not even have faster-than-light travel. Stories grew in the telling. Some said Earth was populated by demons. Others said humans could not be killed. A new name entered the vocabulary of spacefaring civilizations: Death World. A world where everything wanted to kill you. Where the inhabitants were forged in fire and blood. Where war was not a profession, but a way of life. And on that death world, humanity looked up at the stars. They had spent their entire existence fighting each other. Now they knew they were not alone. Now they knew what waited in the darkness between stars. Enemies. Opportunities. A universe full of wonders and horrors they began to build. New ships. New weapons. New defenses. Not because they feared invasion. Because they were done waiting. Done hiding on their small blue world. Done being prey. The galaxy had come to Earth. Now Earth would go to the galaxy. Not as victims. Not as conquests. But as survivors. As hunters. As the species that looked at 9,500 warships and smiled because humanity had learned something during those 7 terrible days. Something important. Something that would change everything. They were not weak. They had never been weak. And the universe was about to find out.